But yeah, we'll do that right now. So then it's
Okay.
no problem.
All right,
Good.
great.
Yeah, I understand. I had to get a new chair recently because I was having such terrible back and shoulder problems. I was like, I'm not that old. What is going on with me? And it's really like that posture. It'll hurt.
I know, like I
So,
keep on trying to, like, golly, but my
yeah.
best right this second. But anyways,
Well, we will get started on putting together some of our sketches, if that's okay with both of you, unless you need a little bit more time with swatches.
I'm good. You
Okay.
good, Katie?
Yeah, I'm good to go on. Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. So we're going to just start with this design right here, just to make it nice and simple for ourselves. And I'm going to sketch this out a little bit darker so you can see it. And it's based off of this one right here, where I did just a slightly more muted version of it. So it's sometimes easier to start with either a circle, or in this case, it's more of a triangle shape that we're creating, or those outer edges. So you can always just do a little rough sketch of the outer shape if you're worried about how big you're trying to fit it in on your piece of paper, because with these, they tend to, you know, as you're working on succulents, sometimes they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and suddenly you don't have enough paper to work with. So if you do just kind of a rounded triangle, and then we'll just do like a center part to it so we know where the middle is. And in that middle point, this is where we can start creating some of our little petals. So they tend to be quite simple in the beginning. You can see that okay. So one is more pointed here, and then one is kind of wrapping around it. And then I'm just going to create another petal working outside of it. So some of them have rounded edges. This one has more of these points to it, so it should be fun to paint. So I'm just going to quickly sketch them in. And usually you're working with just a few petals around each section, and then they start to reverse each other. So like if you have a petal going here, obviously you're going to have another petal kind of coming up through here. So you can easily create designs from your mind if you wanted to, but just to make it easier on today, we're going to work from this example. So as they go out, they're going to get a little bit bigger. Oops, I just dipped in my paint. It happened. So again, we're just going in areas where those other petals weren't, so it's easier to kind of figure out where those are going. Good.
Mm-hmm.
So then we know we need one right along here to balance this out. Same as right here, we have this little gap. So we'll just put another little petal. Or is it a petal? It's not a petal, it's a leaf. I get it confused because they look like petals.
They do.
And then we'll do another one right along here. So some people like to make them really symmetrical. If you want to create more of a patterned design or like a graphic looking design. In this case, we're just going to be working closer to nature. But you can create like a mandala effect with succulents pretty easy. And then we're just gonna do one more around here. So again, we're following that triangle formation, and we're almost finished already with this shape. So some of it's just gonna go slightly outside of it. I got like one more back here. I think this one's a little bit small. I'm just gonna pull it out. So if you wanted to, you can take out this petal and that would still create a really nice design. I'm just keeping it in right here. Put that closer so you can see it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Do you want me to spotlight it for you really quick?
Sure.
Okay, there we go.
Guys, I think I'm gonna need to go. I am not feeling the best, but I will, I'm gonna look at the recording. I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
No,
I'm
I
so sorry.
understand.
It's good to hear your guys' voice, and I believe this next week will be, or 2 weeks from now will be so much better. I'll be in physically all better, but
Oh, yeah. I hope you feel better. Just rest up
thank you so
and we'll
much,
see you
guys.
soon.
Okay, good to hear your guys' voices.
You too.
I feel better. Good to
All
hear
right,
your
thank you.
poor thing. I
I
thought that is awful.
know.
I'm so glad I'm like, you've got no furniture, but you got your paints.
Yeah, it's hard during that moving process. It's always so crazy.
She's got to paint the house. I thought that, yeah, it just feels like so much, I'm sure. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, definitely. So I just went ahead and just adjusted these petals. They felt a little bit off. So I just extended this one out right here and then just made this one a little bit taller over here.
I've been looking at the daffodils. I'm like, oh, the flowers are out.
I know, they're so beautiful. We have so many in our backyard right now and they haven't even finished blooming yet. So I'm gonna have to take some pictures and stuff. But yeah, spring is finally here. I was like pulling weeds the other day and I was happy about it, which is, I never thought I would be happy about pulling weeds, but I love it.
I know, I'm like the snow. I mean, I love the snowdrops, but I'm like, they're all gone. And
They
then all the
are.
bills are popping. I thought the bluebells are next. This is great. And the cherry, oh, the cherry blossoms. I'm like, I want to paint them. They're so pretty.
I love painting cherry blossoms. Those are really fun with watercolor too.
Ooh, I have to
I haven't done this in a while.
Shoot, maybe that should be our next. Gosh.
Yeah, we could if you wanted to. We can just do like a little tree, like a tiny one or some branches.
Yeah, I put down. And Jen mentioned that. Is that okay if we do every other? Is that okay?
For every other week, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
That way you get a week off. And yeah, we have spring break, which the kids are good sports, but I thought that way we have options to. I thought, oh, it's nice. It's not supposed to rain like tomorrow or today.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to take advantage of it as soon as like things really start opening. I don't expect people to be sitting inside making art much longer. But yeah, I mean, do your thing. It's exciting to see what's going to happen when everything kind of, I don't know if it's saying it's normal is correct, but has some sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
Get a little bit more freedom.
I was just reading, maybe you read that. I was reading yesterday because I thought, oh, I haven't checked on numbers. I know the schools went back, but it looked like numbers were great, but were not super increased. And then they had like a record number of vaccines given. And then everything was just like up and up, and then they said, yeah, we're still shooting for May 17th for European wide international travel. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Yeah. I just want, have you been able to get your vaccine yet at all?
No, have you done?
I want to. I know a couple people around here got them just like on Friday, and I was surprised by it because they were a lot younger than me. So I was like, what did you do to get this thing? But it turned out that they had other stuff going on. I got jealous for a second though.
I had one friend who had heard like super last minute that they had extra doses of the first one. And so she went and did it.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what? Because I didn't know. I bet if you just call and you're like, put me on the.
Yeah, I didn't know how that worked. I thought like the husband had to be contacted or whoever, like the spouse in the military is. So I don't know. I need to look into it because if I can get it that quickly, I'm going to get it.
Yeah, yeah. That would be
But yeah, I mean, hopefully we all can do that. And then it'll make travel feel a lot less scary for probably everybody.
Yes, exactly.
So after this, I'm just going to erase most of my lines. I'm going to leave some heavy ones on there just so you can see it on screen.
I like how simple they are to draw. I mean, I don't mean to say simple because they're layered, but I was like, this shape, like, okay, it's the same shapes kind of over and over. This is nice.
Yeah, it is. And you can just like base it off of that circular or triangular shape on it too. So it's pretty exciting. I'm going to do this one too, just because I like the spikes on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you have any succulents or anything in your home, you can base it off of those. It's just, yeah, this is one where it's pretty simple and straightforward. So we'll probably do a few designs today without running out of time. So on this next step, what I'm going to do is I want to do a really thin and light layer of our succulent. So this is where you can choose if you want to have like this sap green mixture here, or if you want to create your own using yellow and blue. I'm just going to go directly into the sap green because that's the color that I want for this design.
Okay.
And depending on how big you make the succulent, you can always use a bigger brush for it too, if that's easier. So this one also has a tiny, tiny bit of Viridian in it. So maybe I will mix the two together. So some sap green and Viridian, just so you don't have to feel like everything is straight out of the tube, which I rarely like doing. Okay, a slightly deeper color. But you want it to be nice and thin. So we want it to be just a hint of this color when we're painting it on. And that seems kind of dark. So I'm just going to add a little bit more water to my mixture. There we go. And I'm just going to cover the majority of my painting with this. So there's a few areas, especially towards like the ends of the petals, or I'm sorry, the leaves that I'm going to leave open.
Okay.
So just make sure you leave a little bit of space of white here or there. And you barely need anything on your brush. I'm mostly just dipping into my water and moving things around. Good. So I just left a few spots open towards the ends, but it's a really just a nice light wash.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. And then this is where you can drop some colors in there if you want. If you want to add just a slightly deeper green in a few spots, you can, or we'll wait for that next step. So I'm going to see how light this dries because a few spots are just where they need to be. I would just make sure that you don't have any like puddles of paint sitting on the surface. If you do, you can just wipe those off on your paper towel. And that will prevent like blooms and things happening that you might not want to have in your design. Good.
Yeah.
So we're going to let that one just sit and dry for a second, and then we'll quickly sketch out this little one right here while it's waiting. And this one's just really fun because it's only really a few petals. So we can start, in this case, we'll just start with a little circle for the inside. And then we're going to start having some pointy petals coming from that spot. So if it helps, you can always do a circle around it just to know where your boundaries of your succulent are. So we have kind of a pointy little shape right here. And then two that are starting to radiate from that part. So it's almost like it's going in motion where it's like turning like a clock around it.
Sweet.
And then I think there's one little petal on the inside too. So I'm just going to cut this kind of in half right here, like that. If you can see that okay. Just so it's not like a perfect circle around it.
Yeah. There you go.
As this one goes out, we're going to do the same thing. We're looking in between at these like points around where our other petals are so they can reverse. And this one has quite a large point. It's going to look kind of like a ninja star or something for a second.
Mhm.
There's also one right about here. So yeah, we have several little petals emerging from this point. I'm going to make them a little bit smaller than what we have on here because otherwise I'm going to go off my page. And then you can just have some tiny little ones towards the middle that are radiating from that spot. So it's going to look like a star or like a poinsettia almost. You can see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you said you were going to Scotland. Did you decide to go anywhere else, like to plan yet? Or
I don't know if I told you I was just, when was this? A month or two ago, I thought because we leave a year from May. And so I printed off the rest, like a 2021 calendar, just like, and then I printed off a 2022 and I was like, circled all the dates, the base is off, that my husband's off, and then circled all the dates the kids are off. And then I was like, okay, that, spring breaks this, Christmas breaks this, summer breaks this. I just started plugging in like our bucket list. And so the first one, which my husband, unfortunately, I think is going to have work, but the kids are off. So the end of April, we're going to go down near the Cotswolds, which we've been once. Just love that area. And it's only 3 hours. And I thought, I don't mind going, me just going as the only adult. And I thought that would be fun. So I found this little, fancy word for RV, but chalet on like a horse farm, and you can like pet the horses and stuff and hang out, and it's just like out in this cute little village called like Green Willow or something adorable.
Oh, that does sound cute.
Yeah, I thought, well, we're getting out, the kids will love it, and we'll just find fun little things to do. So that's the first trip in the works. And then and then I have Scotland, and then my parents, they're Disney people, so they said we have points, let's do Disney Paris. And so we started kind of penciling that in. I've always wanted to take my dad to Normandy. My husband and I, 15 years ago, we were in Germany, but so I booked a really good tour guide to take us to do Normandy, and then we're going to do Paris, quick all around Veterans Day is the other, I guess, kind of big plans right now. But
yeah, that sounds wonderful.
How about you guys? What's first on your freedom list here?
I'm not sure. I know Ross, he has to go TDY soon and we don't know how long. It might be like a few weeks or a few months, but I'll probably do something. So yeah, I think I'm going to explore more of England, and then if I can I probably can't go into mainland Europe yet until he's back, but I'll probably just visit a few places that I haven't seen locally.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're if he can come back sooner, we want to go to Scotland. That's like our big thing in mind.
Yeah.
Or Wales. Because we've
England's so cool. I mean, yeah, you can't go wrong here, I think.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been to several places since living here within England, but then obviously like the pandemic happened. So I'd like to see more of like the beaches and the coastline. That's my favorite here.
Yes. I know I talked to you about Holcombe Estate, but that Holcombe Beach is supposed to be really pretty, and
Mhm.
Southwold is supposed to be really pretty.
Yeah, I want to go there. That would be wonderful.
Are you a Harry Potter fan by any chance?
I haven't read any of the books. I think I've seen 2 of the movies, but pretty much all of my friends are. So yeah. Why do you ask?
Oh yeah, sorry. My sister-in-law is a big fan, and my twin brother, who they're pregnant with their first. And so I'm like, that's the other thing. I was kind of just, you have like all these little projects, but I have all these little projects. So I'm hosting a virtual baby shower for her, and I thought, well, let's do Harry Potter theme. Like, I know she loves it, and it would just make it more fun. So I'm like, well, I'm in England, so my mom's like, I'll sponsor. Don't worry about the cost. Don't spend like $1 million. But so I bought a bunch of just fun stuff. Like I bought this. Oh, it's really pretty. These invitations. This girl does like watercolor invitations, and they're watercolor like the castle with the bird, and it says like a magical bundle. And then it was really cute. She also made like all these little, it's all PDF printables on Etsy that have like bingo for the gifts, and like predictions and stuff. And so so it's just really fun. So I sent all that out, and then I'm just working on these kits. I'll show you this real quick.
Yeah.
It's
Oh my gosh, that's really cute. That's really cute.
And then she just has beautiful stuff. So the other one's got like a little witch's hat and stuff. And anyway, so that's what came with the post lady. But it's these little snitch pens that they have.
Wow. Okay, I know like 20 people that would lose their minds over that.
I'm like Amazon.co.uk. They were like,
yeah.
and then I bought chocolate frogs and for like nothing from this like local, English sweet shop, and jelly beans, and I found the butterscotch beer on Amazon deal. And so of course this place is like the home of Harry Potter, so I found all these neat things that I'm like, I found like a sash that says like 9 3/4 pregnant, like all these
That's hilarious.
funny. So I was excited. So that's kind of been my side project.
Yeah, you definitely have it down. I mean, you probably can go anywhere in England right now and find something Harry Potter. That's really cool. So yeah, one of my friends that lived here, every day that she lived here, she talked about Harry Potter. It was like her favorite thing in the world. And then moved back home to the States and was like, I miss England. I want to go back just because of that.
Yeah, I hope did she take advantage and get to see any of where they filmed?
Oh yeah, they did like a whole tour, and then they went to like when we went to York, they were excited because like the Shambles are there where I guess they filmed some of Harry Potter. So it was just it was pretty hilarious.
Oh, and what's that? Have you been to Lavenham, the Crooked Town?
Yep. Yeah, we had tea there for her birthday. So we went to the one, it was like such a cool and odd experience because like the bathroom is like in their house. It's pretty much where they live. So there's like a bathtub in the public area. And but the food was so good. It was amazing with like the cakes and stuff. They had like a rose cake that was delicious.
Ooh, what was the name of it? What was the name of the place, if you know
oh gosh, what is it called? I'll have to send it to you because I have pictures from it too, and I can't remember it. I think it's called like the Crooked House, or let me look it up really quick. It's gonna bother me otherwise.
Yeah, thank you. That would be awesome. I would love to. Yeah, I love tea anywhere, but I love taking advantage of going to tea time.
No, and it was all homemade. Like the bakery in there was amazing. So, and it's tiny. There's only a few tables in there. But yeah, it was really good.
That's so cool. I can't wait for stuff like day trips. I'm like, oh, Monday.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, I don't mind like getting in a car and driving either. My husband's usually the one that's more nervous about it just because the roads are so narrow. But for me, I'm like, I just gotta go somewhere. So yeah, but I think it'll be good.
I thought that's why we have a small car. You know, if I had a big old van, I'd be stressing.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So it's called the Munnings Tea Room, and they call it the Crooked House. So I'll send you the address for it. Or actually, I think it's this one right here. I'll send you the email or their website link.
Thank you. That would
Yeah,
be
no problem.
Yeah, if you haven't been to the Peak, have you been to the Peak District?
Not yet. That's I definitely want to go there. Oh,
I
no.
put that on the list for sure. There's so much out there, and just the walking trails, I mean, alone make it, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I would love it because I usually go hiking and things. When we lived in Arkansas, we did that like every weekend. So hopefully, when Ross comes back from wherever or whenever he goes, we're gonna just go crazy before we move.
Oh, thank you. Okay, sweet.
No problem. Hopefully that works. I don't think the link worked, but the other thing is the correct name for it.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm gonna save
Okay.
it.
So the next thing that we can do, so I just erased most of this. We can use some of our sap green. And we're just going to do the same thing on this one. We're going to have this be a little bit more of a yellow color. So on this one, I had more of my lemon yellow mixed in with that design. So it's some sap green and just a tiny bit of lemon yellow. And then this is quite vibrant. Like if I do a swatch of it, it's almost like a neon color. So to tone that down, I'm just going to include a little bit of my Viridian. And a tiny bit of that alizarin color. So you can see like that swatch is just slightly different, unless you wanted to go for that really vibrant color. So we're going to do the same thing as before, where we're mostly just going to fill this in, leaving a few little areas of white space, especially towards like the ends of the petals. Did you drive to Bath before too? If you're driving to the isn't that near the Cotswolds? Or that's
It's like 20 minutes. I mean, from
Oh.
Castle Coombe, which was like my favorite little place we went to in the Cotswolds. My parents had been there before, and so they're like, we have to go. And it was so picturesque. I mean, it was just, you jumped in the storybook. It was beautiful. But yeah, Bath, my sister and I went there when she came out last January before everything. We went and saw like the Downton Abbey and toured that house, and then saw Jane Austen and the pump room and everything. And it was definitely worth it. It was amazing.
Yeah, we did the Highclere Castle too, but we went to Windsor. So I didn't get to see Bath yet, but I think I want to before we leave, since that's not very far away.
Absolutely. And Oxford is like on the way too, which is really nice.
Yeah, I went there for a friend's roller derby match, but we didn't get to see the rest of the city. So I would definitely go back for that.
Yeah, Jen, I think, went there on like a day trip, and I think it was her that took like a picture of the light post that like influenced C.S. Lewis's Narnia, and then like the magical door he'd see
Oh, wow.
out,
I
and
know that.
I just love going in like the charity shops, the thrift shops. Like I thought I was a nerd. I was with my sister. I said, I have to buy an Oxford dictionary here. We're in Oxford. I found like a really old one in the thrift store next to Bird and Eagle and Child. I was like, this is so cool.
That is cool. You go there and you're like, wow, this is like, I mean, I've been to college and stuff, but it's like universities like stacked on top of each other, like Cambridge is pretty cool. So
my husband's like, we need to just like can't like spend a weekend in Cambridge. So that way we just like, get it done. Because we've just done dates.
Yeah, we did too. It's pretty fun there though.
It is. They had those candy shops that look like old fashioned. It's like Willy Wonka. Harding's is the one. It was just like we died and went to heaven. We thought this is so cool.
I think is that a chain or is that something just in that area? That is a chain because I went into something that looked like that in London in Camden Market and it looked like we stepped into a fairy tale. And yeah, I think we got like ice cream in there or something, but it was really cool. If I were a kid, I would have lost my mind. So
it was, yeah. I think it is a chain. They're very smart that they do.
Yeah. I mean, was it during the beginning of the pandemic? I think it was. But yeah, there was some people everywhere. Obviously, it doesn't really stop a lot of people from doing things.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one should be pretty dry now. So this is where we're going to go in with a slightly darker color and start carving out our petals. And it's a really simple method. All you need to do is just use a slightly smaller brush. So I'm just going to use this number 4 round or something similar, just so we can get in between some of these lines. And we need a slightly darker color. So I'm going to mix together a little bit of my sap green and a little bit of my viridian. So you might be able to base it off of this original color we had here. Let me see if I can mix that together. So I've got some viridian, some sap green. Let's see how that looks. It's a really synthetic looking green. So I'm just going to tone that down with a little bit of alizarin crimson. Oops, that's too toned down. I forgot I made this really watery, so I have to build that color up a little bit. There we go. So you want it just to be something slightly darker than what we already have on our petals. I keep saying petals, leaves, on our leaves. So you're just going to go right around those edges that we had for our outlines. And you're just going to follow that color around. And we're only going to do that in a few little spots because you can see here how it makes it this really harsh line. So I'm going to dip my brush in my water and then I'm just going to move that color around a tiny bit. We don't want to completely cover over that other color. We just want to make sure there's no harsh lines there. So you can drag your wet brush to dilute some of that. And if you need to, you can wipe off any of that excess paint and water on your paper towel.
Yeah, the paper towel is like my best friend with this.
Yeah, usually when I'm by myself, I'll just like hold it in my other hand and just like, it's like being on autopilot where you don't even realize you're doing it.
Yeah. Because it helps with everything. I'm like, tap, tap, okay.
Yeah. Because it can be really easy to introduce too much water and then your paint's just going everywhere. So again, we're going to follow around each outline of our petals. And you can see here, I'm leaving a little bit of a gap there for when we had our original drawing and the end of our leaf designs. So again, I'm just going to move that color up a tiny bit. And we're just looking to create some shadows. So we don't want to completely cover over that other color. So I just did that and diluted that line. I'll do that one more time so you can see it a little bit better.
Ooh.
And this always works best when your other color has already dried down. Otherwise, it's just going to bloom too much on you and you won't have that type of control that you need to create those shadows. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you can just move that color around if you want to. You can lift up any that's getting too far outside of that petal shape. Otherwise, you're going to just have this color dominating the other one. You can just blend that out. So I'm just going to finish up each side so you can see how that looks.
I wondered how you made them distinct, leaves. I thought, oh, without like just outlining them, with
Yeah.
and or some.
And it helps like when you're learning ones that have this many shapes in them, you can always do an outline in pen and just that be part of the piece. That way, if some of your green overlaps areas, you still have that outline as a guideline for yourself. And it looks really pretty. It's more of like an illustrative looking watercolor, but I've seen it done in really beautiful ways. Because it's easy for these to just turn into big globs, and it's hard to come back from that without putting in some pretty heavy lines. It's looking good. So then later on, if we need to, we can go back in. I know I did that on this one where I made some darker colors here or there, just to make, especially these inside little petals come forward more. But we're just gonna let that sit and dry for a minute. If you did want to make it look more illustrative too, you can always add in a few little pops of your lemon yellow just on top of a few part of your lines. If you feel like it's looking a little bit heavy and you just want to bring back a tiny bit of color. It's kind of overwhelming. Let me put that in just a few little places.
You only are outlining what is on top of something else, like you're not doing the
Right.
outer.
Yeah, because our outer shape for our petals is going to be where we add our like pinks and purples. So we're going to leave that as light as we can right now. So then when we add that color, that red isn't going to go over a green that might dull it. So we'll do that in just 1 second so you can see on this one, because mine is drying so fast right now that it's
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, usually I guess like the weather really is changing because in the winter I always feel like I have to wait a lot longer for this to dry. So yeah, I can put some yellow in there and you can see how that just makes that a little bit more vibrant, more
Yeah.
of like a playful looking succulent color. And then if it feels too overwhelming, you just can pick some of that up.
Yeah.
So for this next step, I'm just going to scoop some of my alizarin crimson out onto a palette because I know I want to dilute that a little bit. And we're going to do kind of the same thing that we did before. We're just working in an opposite direction. So we're going to paint this in from just the very end of our part right here. So we're seeing those points. And then I'm going to just water my brush, and with that clean wet brush, I can pull that color down into the rest of my design. And I can just shake my hand a little bit so it's not like a perfect outline. And I'll just take some of my Viridian and alizarin just to the side if I need a slightly deeper color, just in a few spots. If you want like the end of it to have a sharp looking transition. Oops, got that in the wrong spot. Like that. So this is where you can also use your small brush, because I know on some of these, if you want to create a nice point to it, with a little bit of that alizarin on the end of your brush, you can just pull that out to create a nice point like that.
Ooh.
So we're just going to do that on each one. So if this brush feels too wide for what you're trying to do, especially with these little petals, you can just do that with your small round. So again, I'm going in with some of my alizarin in just a few little spots. And then just a little bit of that Viridian and alizarin mix. So you can see just right along here, and you can keep it as bright as you want. Just gonna put this in a few spots, just especially on these inner leaves that we have. It's easier just to have that little pop of that pink color.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes you can do this in the beginning while you're still adding your original color if you want there to be more of a blend. You just notice that sometimes it's harder to control that red when I'm working. How's yours coming out? Okay.
Yeah.
So you can work really tight like this if you wanted to be really precise with it, or if you want to have it more painterly, you can just use a slightly bigger brush. And, you know, they don't have to be like this perfected or anything. You can just go in with a larger brush in just a few spots, because I know you both like more of that painterly look. I'll just put these in a little bit faster so you can see roughly where everything is at. And then just like before, with a little bit of water on a clean brush, you can just dull that line a little bit and you can get that same effect. I think this is just one of those where it's like hard to freehand it just because there are so many different little shapes. But if you're painting succulents all the time, I'm sure after a while you can just create them from your memory. And I just have 2 little petals left on this one, so I'll just finish those. Now, if you wanted to, you don't always have to have like this pink color around it. It's just a fun way to add that pop of color wherever you want. But even on this original one, not every single petal has it within it. So you can always like pick and choose where you want that to be. This is feeling just slightly washed out. So I know we need to do one more contrast color in the same way where we're going just around these areas of shadow for our petals. So if you wanted to, you can always create a deeper green color. Or I actually have some of this left over, so I might just do one more layer of that. I want that to be a little bit more neutral. So I'm using Viridian Green, Sap Green, and a little bit of my alizarin crimson, but I just want it to be darker than before. So again, you can always do a swatch of it to make sure that it's a correct color. And then I'm just going to go right around those edges and blending those out. Especially towards like the center of the flower, because that's usually where you have the most contrast, where the petals, oh, I can't stop saying petals, where the flowers are protruding more than the flatter ones on the outside. The leaves. I need more coffee.
They look like they're tricky. They look like petals, you know?
Yeah, they really do. My brain just keeps going to that. And you can add as many or few layers as you want for this. You can build it up if you want to have like a really photorealistic looking succulent. In most cases, people can determine pretty easily what kind of plant it is. So you really don't need to have tons of information. But you can put a lot of color in there. So if you want more pinks and purples, you can mix some of your phthalo blue with some of your alizarin crimson, and that makes a really pretty purple.
running with the dog out real quick. I'll be right back.
For sure.
Oh, yay.
Good. And then right towards the center, I'll always add a little bit more of that darker green just to break that up, to make it seem like there's more little leaves that are starting to form in the center of the succulent. But hopefully that is working out okay for you.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm going to do a swatch of that alizarin crimson and blue too, just to show you what other colors you can include into it, because I didn't do that earlier. This makes a really pretty red violet. Or if you add more blue, you can have more of a deep violet color. So I'll just put that on that side.
I like that.
Good. On this one, we would do the exact same method. If you wanted to, you can add, I didn't add any red or that pinky color to the outside of these, but you would just do the same method where you're looking for those shadows around each of these petal shapes. So to do this one, I just created more of this muted green. So it's almost exactly the same green that we use for our shadows right here. If you want to just paint those in. And I know I didn't talk about this too much earlier, but you can always do more of these variegated washes within it too. So if you want to have several different types of greens that are forming under these petals, you can always add in, let's say, some lemon yellow in a spot if it's looking too mucky. And that will create a really pretty petal design too. I'm just going underneath each little section. In these cases, like, you can put together several different designs at once and then just, you know, mix your colors ahead of time, and then you can pump out a bunch of these within just probably 10 to 15 minutes.
Cool. Yeah, just like while one's drying a little bit, you do the other. And then...
Yeah, that's usually how I work in the studio, just so I can keep up with time. But, you know, on some projects, you just have to focus on one design and that's it. And you can spend months working on it if you wanted to.
I know my husband loves the sheep. Those are his favorite. That one.
Oh, yeah, those are fun.
I always do show and tell to the kids when I'm like, how was your day? And we talk about it, and they're like, what'd you do today? And I'm like, oh, you did this. I'm like, I did.
Oh,
So
they're
sweet.
so sweet.
How are you?
I'm glad they're so artistic too. I feel like we all need that.
Yes. Yeah, it's such a gift because they actually had 4 contests that they got to apply for. There's one like with Bob Hope that's doing like coloring thing, and then their school
Yeah,
thing, and then our church was doing a photography contest for different age groups.
that's really cool.
And then the one, of course, the Air Force one that I've been talking about. So they're entering all of them. Staying busy.
Well, hopefully they win. If not, it's still that recognition, it's like a nice collection of people working on art.
Exactly.
I know it's keeping me sane. I don't know what I would do without it, especially this past year. It's like keeping your hands busy is really the best way to get through crazy times.
Yes. I know. And it's like, I was just walking with a friend we met at Brandon Country Park, and she's very artistic. She does like calligraphy, and she like is more, I think, like with wood and making things. But she said, oh, I love watercolor. She's like, there's just something therapeutic about it.
It is. I think it's like so delicate too. You just have to like really absorb yourself into the process of painting more than maybe other things. But I don't know. At least that's how it is for me. I can't speak for other people. So yeah, so we're starting to build that up. And then usually I would do another layer. On this one, I had more of like a blue green. So I incorporated that phthalo blue and burnt umber. But this one's a little bit more of that lighter green, like a yellow green. But yeah, you can work in as many layers as you want for it. There's one other one I wanted to show you that works in a slightly different way, because I know you both really like that watery look to it. So we'll do one, like you can see here where there's this center where it's like with this deep kind of like mauve color that blooms out to the green. When you add in your original color, you can always add that in first and then do your variegated washes. So we'll do that on that one. I just wanted to make sure that we understood like how the petal shapes work for the shadows. But since we're getting more complicated with it, this part should be really fun. So just like before, you can always have, I'm just going to trace this because this is easier for me to see that overall shape. You can start with a circle. And on these are like the opposite, where they're more rounded on the ends. So we can incorporate a few more different petal designs. So you'll just start with a little circle within a circle. I should ask if you're ready for that point too. I'm kind of going fast. I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Yes, sorry. Just one more minute. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, you're fine.
There we go. Okay. Here we go. Okay. I love succulents. They're like one of the only plants I can keep alive, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. I love them too. They're just so many different types and colors. I've had some I've had like the whole time we've lived here, and they just keep getting taller. I don't know how to cut them back that well.
Yeah. All right, I'm ready.
Okay, so you can see here where we're starting again with this kind of center shape. I'm not going to go that elaborate with it, but we'll just base it off of some of these inside petals here. So we'll do the center part where we can just kind of break that up into a few little shapes. So I'll just split that into like thirds.
Oh, cool.
And then we will start including more of these rounded ones. So they kind of come to a point, but they're mostly round on the top, and then they taper in like that. So if you need to, you can always turn your paper, like if you feel like you're losing some of that overall shape. Sometimes when you work in the opposite direction with your hands, it wants to move around on you. So again, you have a point towards the top and then it tapers down. Kind of like how our, what was it? Our hydrangeas had this kind of shape to it, where it's like a rounded diamond shape.
Oh, yeah.
So like that. Just doing this one more from memory. So you're always looking for an area that's kind of has the opportunity to create a petal. And just going a little bit bigger each time you go further out. Okay. I'm just going to make these a little bit bigger so it's easier for us to paint since this is like the first time painting them in. You can always like base yours off of these more elaborate ones. You can use carbon transfer paper if you want to trace them or outline them first. But most of the time you just need a pattern and it's very easy to come up with your own design for it. So we're going to go a little bit outside the boundaries of our little circle that we formed here.
I'm like, I keep going and going.
Yeah, you really can. You definitely can. And then you can just look at it and say like, what might be like, this one's kind of lopsided. So I can just use a slightly smaller one that's like tucked behind the other plants. Just to balance that out a little bit. But the one thing you don't want is it to look like it's too patterned. So as long as some of the shapes are a little bit different in each area, you should be okay. Unless that's the goal that you're going for. Like if you want it really illustrative, it's usually symmetrical and has like these perfect lines. I'm just going to get rid of that little line so you can see it a little bit better. So this one's mostly just from my mind, but yeah, you can go bigger and bigger and bigger. You can see that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
So after that, I will just erase most of my lines. And this always looks better if you have very few lines, so then you just see the colors, just like most watercolors. Although I started recently leaving a lot of my drawing lines in my work, and I was like, oh, that looks really cool. But it depends on the design. Like when I paint my robins and things, if I leave it in there, sometimes it creates like a really cool faux outline. Okay,
Yeah,
so, oh, go
I
ahead.
looked at for the hydrangeas and I really liked how it looked.
Yeah, those are so much fun to paint too. And it's a lot of the same type of patterning as well, where you're just looking for a few shadows and then you've got your piece. So I'm just going to take a little bit of my alizarin out because I'm almost out of it on my pan.
Close the door real quick.
Oh yeah, you're fine.
Barking away. No, no, no. Yeah.
They're probably like itching to go outside too with all this beautiful weather.
I know, they're so funny. I was like, why is she still out there barking? The door's cracked. And I'm like, oh, the wind closed it and she's out. She's mad.
Oh, I understand. So what I'm doing right now for this part, I just wanted to show you, is like usually with these, you need to mix a few of your colors together to get more of this kind of like rusty red color or like this muted red. So I took some of my alizarin crimson and just the tiniest bit of my sap green together. And that's where I got this nice muted pinky color, almost like a rose color.
Okay. Cool.
And then from there, what we'll do is the same thing that we originally did where we're doing a wash of color, but we're going to do it with variegated washes. So that's where we're going to start with this more like reddish center and then move out to greens. So you get those transition colors that you need within it. And to do that, I used mostly my alizarin crimson, my viridian, and sap green. So just like what we did with our little gradations of it, of color, we can do that on here as well. We're just doing it bigger. So we'll start with this color in the center and just keep it nice and watery. So you don't want it to be so opaque that you can't see your lines through it. And then we can start including a little bit of our sap green around it. If you need to, you can always go back in with a little bit more red if it starts to dry too quickly. And just keep dipping your brush in your water if you need it to move across more of your piece. Add a little bit more sap green as you're working your way outside those boundaries, because you can see it's creating more of that brown color that we need for our transition. And then I'll go back in with a little bit of my viridian towards those outer edges. So we're basically just blending on the page.
Cool.
That was really fun. If you feel like the viridian starts taking over, let's say like if I have a really big blob of that right here, I can just mute that down with either a little bit of my sap green or a tiny bit of my alizarin crimson added. I'm just going to kind of swirl it in different parts of my design. So you'll have to work kind of fast because that way you can have those transition colors that you're looking for too. Otherwise, they're just going to kind of sit on top of the paper. So we've got like a nice little thin wash of color. And some of this is probably going to bloom a little bit, which is fine for this one. If you're worried about blooming, you can just always pull up any areas that might be turning into puddles on your piece of paper, even though I know you both like the blooming, so it wouldn't be too big of a problem. And then if you want to have more of these shadows, you can see how this is where we get those like purple and pink areas around the very end. This is where you can use some of your alizarin crimson and viridian mixed together. And while this is still damp, you can do the same kind of transition color where you're just letting some of that bleed in to the very ends of your leaves. So it's going to move around a little bit on you. Or in some cases, it's not moving because it's already too dry. So I'll fix that. Like right here, it's not moving, so I'm just going to put a little bit more water on my brush. Just swirl that around a little bit. And that way that paint is doing most of the work for you, where you get those really pretty bleeds right here, like you can see. So it looks kind of strange at first because we don't have our shadows in yet. But as soon as that's dry, you can start working in those shadows, and then the majority of your painting at that point will be done. So these are very fast paintings compared to some of the other ones we've done in our classes.
Again. Sorry.
Sounds so cute.
Good little guard dog.
They think they're bigger than they actually are. Yeah. My brother had this tiny dog that looked like Toto from Wizard of Oz, and he had the loudest bark. He really thought he was like this vicious beast. It was hilarious.
They're like, what are you really gonna do?
Mhm.
Well, it's funny when I talk on my, when we talk to my parents on FaceTime or on audio or whatever, and they're barking in the background. My parents' dogs in Florida start barking.
Oh no.
Same time zone. Like, what are you
That's
doing?
so cute.
Stop setting them off. So funny. Cool. It is beautiful though to see the transition color. Like,
Mhm. Yeah, so it doesn't feel like, it has a very different feeling from our first one too. So I always like to show both as options because everybody works a little bit different. So you can always add them in later as a way to kind of experiment with color. Or if you're confident that you want to add in those purples and pinks on the outside, it's very simple to do that in the very beginning stages. So it really just depends on that design. That one just kind of has a hard line. So I'm just going to move that around a little bit. And then after that, we do the same thing that we did before with our shadows, but we just want to follow the colors that we have established. So our red shadows we need to do in the beginning, and then we'll transition out to greens and dark greens. So it's one where you can start really carving out that color. So I'm going to still use this number 4 round because I feel like that's the easiest thing to use.
Okay.
And it's the same exact color that we're using. We just don't want it as diluted. So if you need to add a little bit more alizarin crimson and a tiny bit of sap green to your original color, that's fine. And I'll just do swatches to compare. Like this one's obviously a little bit darker now compared to that one. So I just muddied that up. Add a little bit more alizarin. So you can use like the backs of other sheets of paper if you want, just so you're not going through all your good paper during this part. And then we're just going to follow that shape again. It's almost like negative painting when you're on the inside part of this design.
Mm-hmm. I remember when you were teaching me that when we did the charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
I did your succulent on your window, and I still think about that. I could not wrap my brain around like opposite painting. You know how you move shadow in order to create the petals. I'm like, what? It's like mind blow.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a lot of practice with it too. When I first started working with this technique, I failed so many times that I almost gave up on it. I was just like, I don't get it. And I kept watching videos of people doing it, and they did it so quickly that I was like, this isn't that hard, but you have to work in like the opposite part of your brain. And I always want to like just add the paint and not, include these negative spaces. So yeah, you always want to, especially on this one, since we're working in reverse, you need to make sure that part of this still maintains that lighter area. Otherwise, this is going to look more like a hole within your succulent.
It's really, you drop the color and then you blend out.
Mhm. Yeah, we're mostly just kind of pushing the color around. We're barely adding any of it to the actual painting. So I'm just going to have that a little bit towards the center.
Okay.
And then you'll see I'm just like wiping off the majority of that color on my paper towel. So if it's easier, you can just hold the paper towel in your hand. I was doing earlier, and I'll just like, before I know it, I'm just doing this motion the whole time. And it just makes you remember to like wipe off that color too. So then you're not overworking your painting. So I'm just gonna have a little bit more red towards the center. You can see it's forming more of these negative shapes on the center part of our design. It's gonna look really good.
Have you guys watched Hamilton yet?
Yes, I love it. I listen to that soundtrack like every single day now. It's so
Yes.
tiring.
Oh, good. Like Molly, I mean, my mom grew me up on musicals, you know, and
Mhm.
so I played for her. My favorite is the king. I mean, he's
Yes.
he's
He's hilarious.
oh, I mean, and he's in Frozen. He's Sven, or I always
Oh,
keep
I
calling him.
didn't realize that. I remembered him from the Mindhunter show about like serial killers and stuff. He's like one of the FBI agents in it. So I was
Really?
like, oh wow, this guy can sing. This is crazy. And I had no idea he was on Broadway or anything. So it was a really nice surprise.
Yeah, yeah, we know him as Kristoff, and so when I figured out it was him, I'm like, what? Like you said, he really, I mean, because he sings different than he does in Frozen, like different octave.
Mm-hmm.
And so I played it for Molly. We had like a little girls' weekend because the boys had.
Aww.
So she is like obsessed with that song too. It's so funny.
It's hilarious living in England with it too, where you're like, yeah, that seems right for that time. Where it's that kind of like haughtiness that I imagine King George would have. So yeah.
And then I'm like blaring it down the road, you know, and I'm like, I'm the only one listening to this right now. Like, I'm the only person in this little village right now listening to this. But yeah.
Yeah. I know. I got my husband to watch it, and then he was playing it in the Jeep one day, and I was like, you really like this, because he's not really a musical person, but he's like, it's really fun. And he grew up in New York, so he liked all the references to the Revolutionary War, and he probably got out of it more than I did because I grew up in South Carolina. But
yeah, I hear you. I'm like, my like, what's the story behind this? I'm like, you know, I don't know how much of this is accurate. Like,
probably not a lot, but it's fun.
But they're so catchy, all the songs. It's bad.
Yeah, I know Ross likes Lafayette's character because that's like somebody he studied a lot as a kid. So as soon as he came out, he was like, okay, I like this.
When he's like, what did I miss? And I'm like,
yeah.
I love that one. I love George Washington in it. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's my favorite, and then I really like George Washington too.
Yeah, it's hard to compete with the king in it because he just like takes over the whole stage. And he just like every time he like reappears and starts dancing around, it just made me so happy.
Oh, so good.
So in this part, as I'm working my way outside, you can see I'm adding this one is pretty much just solid sap green with a little bit of that original red color to it, just so it doesn't look so vibrant. And we're doing, again, this negative painting technique. So it has a very different look to it than before, but it's easy to get more of those watery colors that you both like to use with your designs. So I'm curious how everything comes out in our next little session that we have, like what you both come up with.
Good.
But yeah, I love musicals too. I was like a theater geek when I was younger.
I tried to get into like the ones my mom got me into, like My Fair Lady and Sound of Music, or yeah, Sound of Music, of course, and then like Some Enchanted Evening from South Pacific. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, but they did like Wicked, which is like one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, Wicked's a fun one.
Oh, yes.
I always liked Little Shop of Horrors. That will forever be my favorite musical.
I need to listen to it. That and like Hairspray, I have not taken the time and I need to.
The 80s film with like Rick Moranis in it. I watched that as a kid and then I was just like obsessed with that musical because I was like, I want to be a doo-wop girl and sing and dance. And it was just funny because my parents were like, okay, well, you can be a theater kid, I guess.
Yeah. That's like me with Grease. I watched Grease every day.
I love Grease.
I was in kindergarten and I was watching it it was like the TV version. So they had of whatever was, but my mom would just let me. I watched it every day.
I loved it too. Yeah, that was my go-to as well, especially in the summer. Like, I always wanted to play Grease in the summer.
That's the best.
Again, we're just adding shadows and things. This is where, as you're working your way outside of it, you can add more of your darker greens. So your Viridian and Sap green with a little bit of red. So we're doing pretty much the exact same thing. It's just a little bit larger. Okay. As it dries, if you need to, you can always add some really deep shadows, especially towards like the center here in a few spots. That seems kind of darker. Let me pick some of that up. But hopefully that's all coming out pretty well.
I got the center down pretty well. Yeah, it's just I'm trying to work through that transition. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, so you can do like one layer of sap green, and then you can always go back in if you feel like right here, this is quite pale now. I put like one layer down. So then you can go back in with a slightly darker color, just where you need that really strong shadow. And then you can just blend that out. And that should help to define these like middle area ones, because those are really tricky to get that shape in with your colors. So you can see like this one side is almost pretty much done. If you wanted to, you can always add more petals because this one is quite simple compared to what the original image was. I just didn't want us to have too many layers like what you see right here, but you can always go really elaborate with it.
Ooh.
So I'll just leave that one right there so you can see how that develops into this. So I don't completely work on it on that part.
I think I'm, yeah, I'm at a good spot, I think.
Good.
Can I show you? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Let me take the spotlight off on this. There we go.
There's the
Oh, wow, those look beautiful.
and the last one.
Oh, that last one looks really nice too. Yeah, you did a great job.
Thank you. Well, it was awesome watching you because I love that pink. That's fun to drop in there on the now that I'm get the shadows.
Yeah, and then on some of these, like I'll take the pin off really quick, or I'll put it back on. There we go. Like on some of these, you can have more of like this deeper like blue gray and like pink with it. So you can do the same thing, especially here, you can drop in like some cadmium yellow. So there's so many opportunities to go really bold with your colors. But yeah, yours turned out really well. I really like that middle one too, where you have just so many different shades of green that build up the plant. So yeah, great job.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, do you want to do, I think it's my turn to pick. Is that okay? Do you want to do cherry blossoms in like 2
Yeah.
weeks?
That should be fine. If that's fine with both of you, let me look at my schedule really quick. I will be taking a little break in April just because I have to put some work together for an exhibition and I am very behind right now. So you said we have the 29th and then we have the 5th. If you want to do
Whatever's better for you, because I mean, I can do next week, you know, if that way gives you all of April off or whatever you need. So
yeah, I'm looking for the first, the 2nd through the 17th is what I was hoping for, but I don't mind a Monday, like if we had to do the 5th for both of you.
yeah, I can see Jen can do the 29th, and that way you know, get your full.
Yeah, okay.
I'm good.
Yeah, Jen.
29th. I'll write it on our thingy, and then that way she sees it. Let's see here. That's the 29th.
And that time is still good for both of you?
Yeah, I have to run to get the kids right now, but yeah, that time is this time is great if that's okay.
Yeah, that one will be a good class too, because we won't go over our time for that one either. These are all pretty straightforward. Well, I'd love to see how the designs turn out if you continue doing more of them during that week.
Yeah.
And I will see you next week.
Thank you so much. This
Thank
was wonderful. Take care.
All right, you too. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.